1986. Sir, I'm really obliged by my presence here, by Dr. Chauhan and PFI allowing me to moderate yet another session. I was thinking why Dr. Chauhan has shifted from cups to the plants. So it came to my mind that plants inspire him to be a poet. He is doing it daily, seeing the plants from the farmhouse of Dr. Tulsi, and he becomes instantaneously William Wordsworth, Longfellow and what all. And he has taken me, rather dethroned me from my poetry. Of course I was doing in Hindi. अंग्रेजी तो मैं तभी बोलता हूँ जब अंग्रेजी पी लेता हूँ. वो सुबह सुबह तो वो मौका नहीं होता anyway. So he takes away poetry from me. Friends, today's talk is on aesthetic dermatology by none other than one of us. I don't think I will introduce her to us because she is with us for so many years, Dr. Lipi Gupta, one of our very senior dermatologists at Max and a cosmetic physician, surgeon, dermatologist, whatever you can say. There are so many procedures which are new to us. I was so amused to see that things have changed when we were students. Dermatology was very limited approach. Today, dermatology has revolutionized and things have changed. Devanand and Simi Grewal, they have ruled the scene by being young for many years, much ahead of their contemporaries. So this is all possible due to aesthetic procedures. So I won't go into details. I will give mic to the speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Kalra. Before I begin this talk, I thank Dr. Chauhan and Dr. Manish, who has really been of help and support all throughout. So today we'll be discussing aesthetic dermatology, aesthetic procedures in dermatology. I hope I am clear. So dermatology as a specialty has evolved over the course of last few decades. It was basically a general dermatology practice initially, and then came in the aesthetic procedures, which made it more interesting and lucrative for those who are picking up dermatology as a practice. So dermatology is broadly now divided into general dermatology also, and there are a huge number of aesthetic procedures which we perform. However,
second mic is disturbing.
Hello. So however, as a dermatologist, choosing the right procedure and when to choose a procedure is of utmost importance, because whatever be it, we cannot ignore the general dermatology practices. Now, how do we define an aesthetic procedure? Any operation or any other procedure that revises or changes the appearance, color, texture, structure or position of bodily features which most would consider otherwise to be within the broad range of normal for that person is defined as an aesthetic procedure. In the stats, this is a study which was in 2005, which is almost 15 years back, and even then they had shown that there were nearly 11.5 million surgical and non-surgical procedures performed in the US. Out of this, the non-surgical procedures outnumbered the number of surgical procedures. By 1997, there has been an increase of more than 444% in the total number of cosmetic procedures. And this is the 1997 figure. The recent figures are much more. All this shows that there has been a huge demand as well as acceptance of aesthetic procedures in dermatology. The top 5 non-surgical cosmetic procedures performed are Botox injections, laser hair removal, hyaluronic acid fillers, microdermabrasion and chemical peels. So we'll be discussing briefly about it because I'm not going to go into the minor details because otherwise it's going to be an endless talk. Now why a rise in the aesthetic procedures? The consumer is more secular, the culture has changed and there is an individual acceptance to remain youthful and a self-image consciousness which has developed over the years. There is also an economic abundance. Now most of us can spare enough money to spend on these procedures. There is advancement in technology and medical devices which do give you results with minimum downtime and complications. Also there is a media-driven demand, high pressure advertising by various media, a breakdown of institution and cultural constraints in the society. However, there is a lack of regulatory control and there is a non-evidence-based aesthetic procedures also will continue to go on in the market and there need to be certain regulations to take care of these procedures as well. So there are a lot of people who are not trained and they are doing these aesthetic procedures and the doctors community should look into it. So I'll be dividing my talk into procedures which we perform for acne, anti-aging, which are the 2 most common forte which we see. Now when a patient comes to us with an active acne, we definitely give them medicines which include antibiotics, isotretinoin, multiple topical gels. However, to treat the acne pigmentation, the acne scarring, we commonly do certain procedures. Out of this, chemical peel is something which we commonly do, not only to give a faster result to the patient, also to give a more aesthetic result in terms of reduction of active acne and reduction of pigmentation. Along with this, in case a patient is suffering from grade 4 acne and has big cyst, draining of cyst, intralesional steroids and lasers are also performed to take care of acne. Coming to chemical peels, what they do to our skin. Now there are huge number of acids which are alpha and beta hydroxy acids which are used in chemical peels. By and large, all of them work to lighten the unwanted pigmentation, even out the skin tone, brighten the skin, smoothen out rough skin, reduce acne, blemishes, fine lines and increase collagen. The chemical peel is a kind of controlled exfoliation and not only it is done for acne, it is also done for aging skin, photo damaged skin and various pigmentary disorders. This is a result which you can see in a patient who has active acne. It is not just the result of the peel, we have combined it with oral medications also. So the patient feels more confident. However, now even after the procedure you can still see a textural change which can later on be targeted with lasers or microneedling. So eventually the patient will have a much smoother skin from where we started. Coming to acne scars, which is a common concern because not only when the acne heals, it leaves behind multiple pigmented spots, it also leaves behind scars. Now broadly we divide the treatment of acne scars into something which is either the acne scars are superficial or deep. When the acne scars are deep, by and large it is CO2 fractional laser which works the best. Now this is an ablative laser. How it works is that it creates microthermal zones in the skin. The microthermal zones which are created, they create a damage on the epidermis with leaving a 360-degree normal skin around that area. So what happens is there is a collagen remodeling which results in improved scar and the surface lifts up. Normally these laser procedures are performed once in a month and by and large most of the patients will need at least 3 to 5 sessions to take care of the scars. The other procedures which we perform include subcision, punch elevation, punch graft and punch excision. These are seen when the acne scars are deep and wide, that we need to excise that particular area or lift that particular area. Along with this, now we also have microneedling technology, which again creates an injury at the epidermal level, leaving behind collagen to remodulate, which we use in superficial scars. The non-ablative laser is broadly of three types. We have the erbium YAG, the erbium glass, and the CO2 fractal. The erbium YAG and the erbium glass works to remodel at a superficial level, whereas the CO2 fractal works as a deeper level. In all of these lasers, the chromophore which is used is water, which absorbs the laser energy and causes thermal injury. Now these lasers, which are non-ablative, are not only used for acne, they are also used to treat fine lines, wrinkles and superficial scars. Wherever we are looking at improving the texture of the skin, we can do a laser to improve the overall appearance of the skin and improve the fine wrinkles. This is a patient. In this we have just done two laser sessions and you can see an improvement in the scars. However, this patient needs further laser sessions. Now coming to pigmentation. The management of pigmentation on the face has always been very specific to a patient and it's difficult at the same time. It's important that whenever we have a patient of pigmentation, be it melasma, freckles, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, we need to first understand the cause. Now when a patient comes to melasma, in a history it's important to find out whether the patient is having any oral contraceptive use, the sun exposure of the patient, what medicines the patient is using. Only then you will go to a procedure. And a procedure should only be performed when your medical therapy has already been given. In the procedures which we perform for pigmentation, it includes chemical peels. Now the peels are broadly divided into a superficial, a medium depth or a deeper peel. The superficial peel works by working on the superficial layer of the epidermis, and the patient may perceive a slight dryness which will settle down in 2 to 3 days. Whereas in a medium depth peel, the dryness, redness and exfoliation can continue easily up to 7 to 10 days. Along with this, we have lasers which work by targeting the melanin on the dermal and the epidermal layers, and they break down the melanin to reduce the pigmentation. Now the chromophore which is targeted by lasers, the Q-switched Nd:YAG laser is the laser which is used for targeting pigmentation. The target chromophore is melanin. It works by destroying the melanocyte at the dermo-epidermal junction. In most of the cases, we have either an epidermal or a mixed melasma which has pigmentation both in the epidermis and dermis, and the laser targets both this well. Now in the protocol which we follow, we either go in a protocol in which we are doing just a peel, we can do a laser with a peel, and we can just do a laser. So it's in our hands depending on the kind of pigmentation which the patient is suffering, the kind of downtime the patient is ready for, that we decide a treatment. Now this is a freckle which is treated with a laser, and within 2 sessions we can see a reduction in the freckles. But at the same time, since freckles will reform after sun exposure, this has to be explained to the patient about adequate sun protection and other skin lightening creams or serums which the patient can continue after the laser session. This is again Q-switched Nd:YAG laser which has been done for post-inflammatory pigmentation, and we can see the results following the procedure. Again, another patient with melasma, you can see there has been a reduction in the pigmentation after the laser session. Coming to laser hair removal. Laser hair removal was one of the first lasers which started in use clinically because unwanted facial and body hair was something no one desired. Now there has been a change in the type of laser which we have used. Initially, it was more of Nd:YAG, a long pulse Nd:YAG laser which was used, which was later replaced by diode 810 nanometer, and now we have a triple wavelength laser which combines alexandrite with diode, which gives better results. Now the kind of laser choice depends on the type of skin, the kind of hair which we are treating. So in Indian skin, we either prefer using a diode laser or we prefer a triple wavelength laser if the patient has a fine hair. Now how a laser for hair removal works, it works by the principle of selective photothermolysis. We want the laser energy to be absorbed by the melanin in the hair, eventually heating up the hair shaft and the hair follicle and causing a destruction of the hair follicle. So initially, if we are targeting 100 hair follicles, in one laser session, we will see that 50 of the hair follicles will get destroyed. However, the remaining 50 will regenerate over a period of time. And that is why in laser hair removal, you will need multiple sessions. Now the number of sessions will vary according to the hormonal profile of the patient. It's important to evaluate whether the patient is having a hormonal disturbance, most likely PCOD, which we commonly see. If a patient has a PCOD, it's important to treat it either parallelly or finish a treatment for at least 3 months before you start a laser hair removal session. Counseling is important. What the patient needs to do in between sessions is important because many of the girls and women will continue to keep removing the hair even in between sessions, which might delay the final result of the procedure. The sessions are scheduled after every 4 to 6 weeks, and after the patient should be advised to come again for a session when the patient has a significant hair growth. The hair follicle it has 3 different stages of growth: the anagen stage, the catagen stage, and the telogen stage. When we are targeting a laser, ideally we should have maximum follicles in the anagen stage because this is a growing hair follicle. That is why the time interval in between the sessions is important, that you should wait enough for the anagen hairs to grow before you do a laser session again. Another laser which is becoming now popular is the excimer laser, which is a monochromatic laser of 308 nanometer, which works for vitiligo and psoriasis. It works by stimulating melanin synthesis as well as improving the epidermal cell turnover. That is why these 2 common indications. Recently, we are seeing a gradual increase in the number of vitiligo cases, and that's why the excimer laser is also becoming more and more popular. The problem with vitiligo is that no one wants to go into and have steroids and other immunosuppressives, especially when the disease is more localized. Laser gives good results. You can see a patient before and after excimer laser. Now after this lasers, now I'll be discussing about the anti-aging part of dermatology, which is the most commonly done techniques what we are following. Now it's important to understand that when we are aging, there is aging which is happening at 3 levels: the skin level, the tissue level, and at the bone level. Our face is divided into multiple fat pads. We have a superficial fat pad and we have a deep fat pad layers. There is regression of certain fat pad layers and there is increase or hypertrophy of certain fat pad layers, which lead to formation of the nasolabial fold, the marionette line, the tear trough deformity. So as we all grow, we have a more youthful collagen at 20. There is a decline in the collagen levels. Above 30 years of age, we are almost losing 1 ml of hyaluronic acid per year. So a gradual decline in the HA content, and the skin gets more saggy. There are more increased open pores, there is more increased pigmentation. So a gradual change as we all age, and what we are trying is to reverse all this. So broadly we divide non-surgical facial rejuvenation into, first it's important to identify that what you want to treat. You need to treat a sun damage or an aging spot, then we have creams, we have lasers, we have other resurfacing procedures. Whether you want to restore a lost volume, then we have the fillers. We have energy-based devices which work by collagen remodeling and collagen tightening. If you have a mild joiling, a jowl formation, then a thread lift or a filler will be a good idea. Tightening the skin, we have HA modulators. Now we have bio-HA modulators, which is commonly known as Profilo, which works to stimulate new collagen production. Whether you are aiming to rejuvenate a sagging brow or an eyelid, we have a thread lift, we have radio frequency devices, we have Botox. But we are working whether to smoothen facial wrinkles or folds, fillers, energy-based devices, remove unwanted facial hair, reduce a double chin, we can do a cryolipolysis, injection lipolysis, or something which works with threads to improve the chin projection. To improve smooth or lighten crepey skin, we have multiple tightening devices which work as epidermal, dermal, and at the submuscular aponeurotic fascia also, which is commonly known as a HIFU. So all of this, the list is endless, but important to choose based on the patient's budget, how much downtime the patient is ready to accept. So this is a pigmentation change what we have seen in the patient. The patient had an epidermal and a dermal melasma, and we did a medium depth peel, and you can see the results, and this is within a month of the treatment. Now important to understand what a Botox does and what a filler does to your face. A Botox is basically a neurotoxin. It's working at the neuromuscular junction. Thereby the overcontraction of the muscle which we develop by frowning, by smiling on the crow's feet and the forehead lines, it relaxes them. It works only on the dynamic facial lines, it doesn't work on the static facial lines. A static facial line may need an addition of a filler to improve it. It's important that Botox predominantly we do to treat the upper third of the face, the middle and the lower third we treat predominantly with a filler. The result starts within 3 to 7 days and stays for not more than 4 to 6 months. So now this needs to be explained because it's not that you do a Botox once and you are done for life. It needs to be repeated again and again. Coming to now, important is we are now moving on to management of facial expressions and not on facial lines. So what has been changed that as all of us age, we start looking more angry, more tired. So now the management of facial lines and droopiness is based on the kind of facial expression you develop. Many a times we see patients who are above 35, 40 years, they start having a very angry look on the face. This is because of overcontraction of the forehead muscles. So relaxing these muscles will give you a more relaxed appearance. Now coming to fillers, the fillers are divided into multiple types based on concentration of HA, the cohesivity of the product and the expanding potential of the product. We have a filler which could be injected superficially into the skin just to hydrate it, and a filler which could be done on the bone to give you a projection. Now there are almost 6 to 7 different kinds of fillers which are used, and depending on the need the patient has, the kind of product is chosen. Now if you want to improve a dark circle, enhance volume on the cheeks, correct the nasal shape, reduce smile lines, restore a lost volume, a filler is used. Generally when we start doing a filler, it's important to understand the facial asymmetry, what you need to correct, the amount of product you'll be needing while injecting the patient. All of these have to be discussed with the patient, because now you are entering a zone which is going to be costly for the patient. So every detail has to be explained to the patient before you start doing the procedure. Now beyond aesthetic uses of Botox, as we discussed, frown lines, forehead lines, crow's feet, we also do it commonly to treat the necklines, post-herpetic neuralgia and migraine. This is patient post-Botox, you can see a reduction of the crow's feet and the forehead lines, which you can see within 2 to 3 weeks of the procedure. Important is to understand your facial forehead muscles are working in a pulley mechanism. You have elevators and depressors. Doing it in the right way is important. Otherwise, the results of Botox are mostly irreversible. So when you are injecting, considering the facial profile, the position of the bony changes, because as we all age, you will see the eyebrow starts drooping. If you palpate the orbital rim will be at a higher position and the brow will be at a lower position. So over-injecting on the forehead in such a patient will lead to more droopy eyes, and the patient is going to come after a week and say that what you have done, I am looking more worse than what I was before. So this is important. Also, another point to note is that we have a modulus, which is a collection of 6 muscles along the lateral side of the lip, in which we have most of the muscles innervating. So, any kind of over-injection into the crow's feet will be discussed. There are large number of products which are available. So, depending on the type of indication I need to target, I'll choose my product. Now, this picture, we have not done much in this patient. We have just done a filler to improve the skin texture. This product is known as Juvederm Volite. We inject it into minute, small points all around the face just to hydrate the face. The patient is young. Patient doesn't want too much of structural change, but you can see overall the clarity of skin has improved after the injection. In this, we had an atrophic scar, which is post-acne scar on the right side of the cheek, which we have treated with a filler. We have done 1 ml, and you can see the symmetry of the face has been restored to a good extent. However, in this patient, you can still see after the procedure, there are still finer depressions, which can later on be targeted with a more superficial filler. Now, since there was a budgetary limitation, we did something which was most needed to the patient. There are other procedures, microneedling, platelet-rich plasma therapy, and we have multiple energy-based devices like monopolar and bipolar radio frequency and high-intensity focused ultrasound. Now, I'll just be briefly describing these procedures. Microneedling or Dermapen 4, which is the new, more FDA-approved device, works by creating injuries in the epidermis, leaving behind an inflammation and stimulating new collagen production. So what we are looking at as a more smoother skin. So anyone who is looking for textural improvement in the skin, a very good procedure with minimum downtime. The platelet-rich plasma therapy as PRP now, we are using it in different fields. The basic principle is that we are taking blood, we are segregating platelet-rich plasma or the platelet-rich fraction of the blood. And these days we have kits, we are segregating growth factors from those platelets, and then we are injecting it on a specific area, be it hair or be it face. For the face, it is also known as a vampire facelift, again to stimulate new collagen production, stimulate new growth and new cells to improve hair loss and to reduce hair loss and to improve hair growth. The energy-based devices which are commonly used are radio frequency, which is either monopolar or bipolar, which works by tightening the existing collagen and also stimulating new collagen production. This will lead to improvement in sagging skin and tightening the skin. So this is also working at an epidermal level as well as a dermal level to tighten the skin. The HIFU device is a very interesting device because if you do too much, you will be at a loss. The high intensity focused ultrasound is an ultrasound based device. It has 3 probes to it, working at a depth of 1.5, 3 and 4.5 millimeter. The 4.5 millimeter works till the fascia level and tightens the muscle. The 3 mm probe works at the dermal level, but if you overuse it, you will lead to fat atrophy because you are basically bypassing the epidermis and looking at a deeper level. However, when you are wanting to shape the jawline in patients who are heavy, HIFU is an excellent device. For hair restoration, we commonly use PRP and hair transplant. PRP, as I mentioned, works by stimulating new cells. It reduces hair fall within 2 to 3 sessions, which are done once every month, and it improves hair growth. But again, with PRP, you are basically, when you are doing it for hair restoration, it's important that after 3 to 4 sessions also, the patient has to keep coming to you every 3 to 4 months because the benefit of this therapy will start declining as time passes. So let's say if a patient comes and does PRP, after 3 or 4 sessions, the patient needs to continue, though you can increase the time interval between the sessions, but still the patient needs to continue for the procedure. And hair transplant, in which you have a donor area. Now the theory of the donor area is that The donor area, which is the occipital area, will not, with the hair loss theory, which is the testosterone dependence theory, doesn't work for this area. So when you take a graft from this area and put it on any part of the scalp, it will still continue to grow because the receptors, the testosterone receptors, are not present on these areas. So the hair transplant, we have broadly two techniques. We have a strip technique and we have a follicular unit extraction technique. In the strip technique, we are basically taking a strip of skin with the hair follicles from the occipital part of the scalp. We are segregating individual hair follicles and then we are implanting it to the frontal part of the scalp. In the follicular unit extraction technique, we have individual hair follicles which we take out by punch and then implant it. Now when we are having a patient for hair transplant, the most important thing we want to create is a frontal hairline. We are not concerned about vertex baldness because no one will get up and see what is happening on the top of the scalp. Everyone wants to have a good frontal hairline. However, if a patient is already into grade 4 or 5 of the Hamilton-Norwood classification, hair transplant also is not a good option, and then you have other procedures like micro-wefting or hair pieces which are available. So this was something, a very broad preview of what we do